Hi, my name's Tom Patton. I'm the instructor for Arts 343 Non-Silver Photography. My email address is patton@csuchico.edu. This semester I'll pretty much read my emails Monday through Thursday. I run a blog for Arts 343. The address there, it's also posted on Blackboard, is arts343 nonsilverphoto.wordpress.com. I'd like to give you a brief introduction to the class, what I expect to do, and my expectations of you and your expectations of me. Let me start with the course description from the catalog, because the course pretty much follows that description. This course provides an introduction to contemporary techniques and aesthetics of non-silver photography. Both historical and non-traditional photographic processes and their application to fine art photography are covered in this course. I do have a recommended textbook, and it's a great textbook, but I'm not going to require simply because it's an extra expense. But it's this, and I know it will be backwards, but it's on your blog site as well. Jill Enfield's Guide. It's really a good book. I've used it in preparation for my blog, but indeed it's, again, an added expense, so I'm not going to make you do that. There's one other book I would recommend, and it's Christopher James. It's the Alternative Photographic Processes book. You can kind of see this is a big, thick book. It's even more expensive. This is well over $100, and it's a great book. It's maybe even more complete than Jill Enfield's Guide, but both of them are really great books if you're interested in continuing your practice with non-silver, non-traditional photography. In this course, we're going to do 3 processes. The cyanotype, which is a fancy name for blueprint. Here's a cyanotype I did years ago of one of my daughter's dolls, and I simply made a photogram of that, put the doll in contact with some cyanotype paper, which I coated, stuck it out in the sun, and allowed the part that the sun hit to harden. The rest you simply wash away with water. So we're going to do cyanotypes. It's a simple process. It's pretty easy. I did cyanotypes the very first time when I was in Cub Scouts, and not too many years ago at CSU Chico. We had 33 third graders in our darkroom. All came away with a successful cyanotype at the end of the day. So it's certainly within any of our skill level to produce a cyanotype. We'll also do gum bichromate prints. Gum bichromate is a process where the light-sensitive chemical is actually colorless, and so you add pigment. Here's one example. I did this one just a large scale. Don't worry, I don't know the rock. I did a series of portraits, or I'm still working on a series of portraits that I made at wax museums. But indeed, I did this, just happened to do it with the blue pigment. I brought a couple other samples just to show you. One of the nice things about gum bichromate is you can do the image in different colors, and frankly, you can overlay the colors and build up color that way, though that's not going to be my expectation of you in this course. In addition to that, we're going to do an anthotype. And an anthotype is an interesting process. You use plant material, grind it into basically a pulp, into a liquidy pulp, and then you take that liquid, coat it on paper, and then allow it to dry, and then you put a positive in contact with that, again, stick it out in the sun, and let the parts that the sun hits bleach away. You're going to get very faint results. I'm going to show you one here. And you can see that you kind of have a limited tonal spectrum, but it's an interesting, fun, and fairly easy process. And all of these processes you can do at home. And that's one reason I selected the anthotype. We used to do another process Van Dyke printing. But Van Dyke, you really need a dark room. You need safe lights and really need a little bit different conditions. My expectation for your need is essentially you need access to a sink or water. It could be a hose outdoors, but ideally a sink or even a bathtub could work in a pinch. You will also need a room that you can darken. When I say that, it doesn't need to be a dark room. You don't need to get it completely dark. Could be a bedroom or frankly even a walk-in closet that you can kind of pretty much get it more or less dark. It could even be that you do it at night where you coat your paper. Certainly you would want to put paper down or something in case you spill. But really, for rudimentary conditions, you can do all three of these processes. And one of the things you're going to see on the blog site as you go through that is that I did all of these processes this summer in preparation for this class. I did them at home. I do not have a darkroom. I do have a garage, and so I basically use the garage to coat my paper in, use my backyard to expose, and I have a utility sink in our laundry room. I use that as the sink. So I did have those conveniences, but as long as you have some access to a sink and some access to a room that you can kind of get dark, frankly, you could even go out at night without a lot of spotlights and simply coat your paper at night and put it in a box to dry. All of these processes are pretty low-tech, if you will. So they're all doable at home. One of the things I'm going to have you do, there's 3 assignments that go along with the 3 processes. And one of the interesting things, and I do differently in this class than most of my classes, is that you get to pick which assignment you apply to which process. So you have some flexibility there, and they're all sort of spelled out and laid out in the blog site. And I should tell you, when I give assignments, my assignments are always there simply to generate ideas. I use commonalities, things that are common to most all, if not all, photographs as the impetus for my assignments, but they're there to generate ideas. If you have ideas that you want to use for your projects, you can work them into the assignments. And you should know that I never grade your assignments on how well they follow the title or my idea of the assignment. I grade your project and how well it gets your idea across. So if you're worried about your idea maybe not quite fitting an assignment or not, if it's something that you're interested in and something that you want to pursue, do it. I'm less worried about they exactly follow my assignments. So you do have a fair amount of creative latitude in this class. One of the harder things doing this online is critiques. And so to do critiques, I don't want you just to hear from me, but I want you to be able to hear from each other. I've talked to enough other faculty to kind of realize that the Zoom meeting doesn't work all that well for critiques. At least that was what the bulk of the experiences were. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually ask you to send me images. I'm going to post them on the blog site and then ask you to make written comments. And then for each of your assignments, what I'm going to do, rather than doing written comments, because I want to elaborate a little bit more on each of your projects, and I'm kind of a 2-finger typist. I'm really kind of slow at that. So what I'm likely going to do is to bring up your images that you send to me, and then I'll probably do something like I'm doing now where I just record off the computer screen and talk a little bit more in depth about the work. Either that or I'll send you a voice memo about your work. But I want you to be able to hear my critical responses about your work, not only the quality of your imagery, but the techniques and stuff as well. So you may get a little more in depth from me than from each other, but I want you to be able to get feedback from each other as well. And so at least that's how we're going to start with this. If I find a better system, I may change it midstream, but at this point, I think this will work, and that's probably where we'll begin. With that, you'll be documenting your work with photographs, but that should be for photo students or people in an advanced level photo class. That should be kind of fairly easy for you to do. One of the things that we're going to have to figure out a little bit is that for some of these processes, the cyanotype and for the gum prints, you need a negative if you're going to make a positive print. Well, you can always use collage or photogram materials and things like that, where you just put things in contact with that light-sensitive paper. But if you're looking for a more traditional negative, again, I still have some details to work out, partly because the university hasn't decided what our student budget is. What I'm hoping to do is to hire a work-study student to print digital negatives in our facility for you. You would send in your files, we would print them, and then mail them back to you. And we would do that a few times during the semester, and they'd be designated times on your blog where you could send in files, and we'd do that. If that doesn't work, if we don't have a budget for work-study students, then I will come in and print them myself. Again, I will ask for specific times for these, and so I have some specifications on how to make the file. Again, that's on the blog site as well. But that will give you the option. If you don't have your own printer, we can still use our facilities and our printers and get you that back. It will provide some limitations in size. We'll pretty much be working 8.5 by 11 for digital negatives. It doesn't mean that if you're working in some other manner that you can't do larger pieces. And indeed, depending on your space, you might need to do smaller pieces. What if you can't fit that size into your sink or what have you? Indeed, size is something that I'm not going to dictate to you, that you should let your interest in your materials and your space kind of dictate what you'll be able to do. Do know that none of these chemicals are good for you, and we will be providing chemicals for you. And so when I say that, the two processes that use chemicals, the cyanotype and the gum, we've purchased kits to send to you. Preferably if you're in Chico or will be in Chico, we can arrange a time and I'll actually be able to give you those kits. They're from Photographer's Formulary, and so they're small little boxes. That was the gum kit, and here's the liquids from the cyanotype. We've purchased those. I think I got 11 versions of those. So we have 9 people currently enrolled in the class, so I have one for everybody, and frankly a little bit more if I don't have other people add to the class. So one of the things, I'm going to send out an email. I'm going to ask, are you local? Can you come by and get these things? Otherwise, we will mail them to you. You should take precautions with chemicals. No chemicals are good for you. There's a safety supply list on your blog. You should use them. When I say that, wear glasses if you have them when you mix chemicals, or use safety goggles. And gloves. I didn't bring them, but gloves for your hands. And my guess, with the pandemic, you probably all have a box of nitrile gloves anyway. But use some sort of glove that liquid can't penetrate. Frankly, we're using these in fairly small dilute quantities, and all of the stuff can go down the drain. One of the things my chemist friends used to tell me is the solution to pollution is dilution. They don't say that anymore because it's not completely true, but indeed diluting the chemical makes it less toxic as you put it down the drain, and there will be some waste in that respect that you create in making these works. So do know that all the chemicals, or I should say none of the chemicals are good for you, so take precautions with them. And certainly as you store them, if you have kids in the house, put them in a place where the kids don't have access to them. How do I grade in this class? I grade on a point system. You earn points for the projects, and again, there's 3 projects: cyanotype, gum, and the Anthotype project. I grade on 200-point maximum system. The cyanotype project is worth 60 points, as is the gum project. The Anthotype is worth 50 points. Your results with Anthotypes are going to be a little more sporadic, and so I'm going to have that count a little bit less. And then there's 30 points, 10 points each for participating in the critique. That's where you're providing written critical comments to your classmates, and you can do that anonymously. And so as long as you participate, I'll give you full credit for that. But indeed, so that 200 points, it's 3 projects, 3 critiques. The projects are 170 of the 200 points. The 3 critiques are 30 points. I have a couple other things to tell you. And again, for local people, I have a few printing frames. This is and you can see the reflection, this is a frame with a piece of glass. It opens on the back, and it's a convenient way for you to expose your light-sensitive material. I have 6 of these. I'm willing to check them out for the semester, and I have a few more that are in parts, and as long as we have our sculpture staff member, David Barta, working, and I haven't heard yet whether he's going to be back this fall or not, but as long as he's there, we can probably put together a couple more out of the parts that I have. But on a first-come, first-served basis, I will check you out one of the printing frames. I think it's 11 by 14 inches in size, so it limits in some ways the size. Otherwise, you're going to need a sheet of glass, something like that, to hold your projects flat under the sunlight, and particularly with the Anthotype process, sometimes the exposures are long. And when I say long, I mean long, like a week. So be prepared for that. The others, you're talking about seconds or maybe a minute or two. But indeed, Anthotype is a slower process. I haven't been in the darkroom lately, but I also have a few university darkroom trays. So if you come to pick up a printing frame and want to check out a university darkroom tray, I'll check out 1 tray per student. Again, I haven't checked how many I have, but my guess is I have more than 6 of these, so I probably have enough trays for everybody that are currently enrolled in the class. But that's guesswork. Don't quote me on that. I'm just going to basically check these out, as many as I can, first come, first serve. I will send you out an email about that. I checked Blackboard today, and for some reason, I still don't have access to the student list yet on Blackboard. So frankly, I don't know who you are yet, so I hope to learn soon. But when I do have access to that, I'll send out the email. And again, I want to know if you're going to be coming to campus so that I can check you these things out. Otherwise, there's always substitutes, and I've listed some of that on the blog site. Let me really quickly look at my notes, make sure I covered everything. You probably have questions, and so if you do, email me, tpatton@csuchico.edu. But it looks like otherwise I have fulfilled what I planned on my notes for this introduction. So I'll be in contact soon and during the course of the semester. And I guess I should just say in conclusion, these processes are fun. It should be a fun class. Don't stress too much. I want you to do good work, obviously, and I want you to pay attention to what you're doing, but you should also have fun with it. That's the purpose of doing these. They're kind of unique. Each and every one's a little bit different, and have fun with hopefully all 3 of them. Cheers.